Prince Harry has just lost one of the biggest legal battles of his life, and he's not staying quiet about it. After an 11-week trial, a high court judge threw out every single claim brought against the publisher of the Daily Mail. 97 separate allegations, all dismissed. Harry's response: he called it, I quote, a complete and obvious whitewash. Today we're breaking down what actually happened in this case, who else was involved, why the publisher is calling it an overwhelming victory, and what this means for the decades-long war between the royals and Britain's tabloid press. Let's get into it.
Prince Harry has lashed out after losing his lawsuit against the publisher of the UK's Daily Mail. The Duke of Sussex, along with Elton John and Liz Hurley, had accused associated newspapers of tapping their phones, but the court found they failed to prove unlawful conduct and dismissed all claims. The former editor of the paper in question...
To understand why this case matters, you need to understand what it was actually about. Prince Harry, along with 6 other high-profile claimants, sued Associated Newspapers Limited, the publisher of the Daily Mail and the Mail. The lawsuit alleged that journalists, or people working on the publisher's behalf, had used unlawful methods to gather information for around 50 articles published between 1993 and 2011. We're talking about accusations like phone hacking, voicemail interception, tapping landlines, and something British tabloid culture calls blagging, essentially obtaining private records through deception by pretending to be someone else to trick institutions into handing over sensitive information. Harry wasn't the only famous name attached to this case. He was joined by singer Elton John and his husband David Furnish, actress Elizabeth Hurley, actress Sadie Frost, Baroness Doreen Lawrence, the mother of murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence, and a prominent campaigner, former Liberal Democrat politician Simon Hughes. 7 claimants. Decades of alleged wrongdoing. And a legal bill that both sides warned could hit £50 million, somewhere around $67 million US. This wasn't Harry's first fight like this either. It's actually the 3rd major lawsuit he's brought against British tabloid publishers. He previously took on Rupert Murdoch's News Group newspapers, which owns The Sun, and separately sued Mirror Group newspapers, publisher of the Daily Mirror. Both of those earlier cases ended very differently.
To wash all the dirty linen he has aired about his own family. Poor Harry. I feel sorry for the way a confused and angry young man has been drawn into this case.
Let's rewind for a second, because context matters here. In the case against Mirror Group newspapers, the judge, Mr. Justice Fancourt, actually ruled in Harry's favor. He found that phone hacking had become, in his words, widespread and habitual at Mirror titles in the late 1990s, and specifically that Harry's own phone had been hacked to a modest extent. Harry was awarded just over £140,000 in damages after the judge concluded that 15 articles about him were the direct product of unlawful information gathering. That was a genuine legal victory. A judge, after hearing evidence, ruling that hacking happened and that Harry was a victim of it. The News Group newspapers, case the one involving The Sun, settled in January 2025. The publisher agreed to pay substantial damages and issued an apology to Harry for intruding into his personal life over more than a decade. So going into this Associated Newspapers trial, Harry had a genuine winning streak. 2 publishers had either been found liable or settled with an apology and payout. This 3rd case looked, on paper, like it might follow the same pattern. It didn't. The trial itself ran for roughly 11 weeks, starting in January 2026. Prince Harry actually appeared in person to give testimony, and reporters in the courtroom described him holding back tears as he spoke. It was notable enough that commentators pointed out he was the first senior royal to testify in court proceedings in over 130 years. During his testimony, Harry alleged that the Daily Mail's coverage had made his wife Meghan's life, in his words, an absolute misery. But here's the critical legal issue that ultimately decided the case. Suspicion isn't proof. The presiding judge, Mr. Justice Matthew Nicklin, laid out the core problem in his ruling. The claimants believed strongly that journalists at the Mail titles had used unlawful methods. But belief and suspicion are not the same thing as evidence a court can act on. In the judge's own summary, he rejected the argument that just because information was private, and because the publisher couldn't perfectly explain every single source, that meant the story must have been obtained illegally. That logical leap, "we can't prove where this came from, therefore it must be illegal," is exactly what the court said doesn't hold up. The publisher's defense throughout the trial was that its journalists used entirely legitimate sourcing. Friends of the claimants, royal aides, publicists, and other contacts who volunteered information. Associated Newspapers lawyers described the claimants' case in court as threadbare and argued their journalists could offer what they called a compelling account of a pattern of legitimate sourcing. In the end, the judge agreed with the publisher. Every one of the 7 claimants failed to prove unlawful information gathering had taken place for the articles in question. All 97 allegations dismissed. The full written ruling ran to 436 pages. Paper, like it might follow the same pattern. It didn't. Now let's get to the reactions, because both sides came out swinging. Prince Harry, in a joint statement with Baroness Doreen Lawrence, didn't hold back. He called the decision a complete and obvious whitewash, but sadly not altogether unexpected. He went further, saying the lengths to which the court has gone to exonerate the Mail is as shocking as it is totally unwarranted. He also pushed back on the fairness of the process itself, saying it felt like one rule for the newspapers and another for the claimants, and questioned how justice could be achieved when, in his view, evidence pointed one way but the court ruled another. Harry and Lawrence thanked their legal team and what they call the brave witnesses who came forward and made clear this isn't the end of their broader campaign, stating they remain committed to exposing wrongdoing and ensuring that those responsible are held to account. On the other side, Associated Newspapers didn't just accept the win quietly, they leaned into it hard. The company called the ruling an overwhelming victory for the Daily Mail and its journalists, and even used the phrase, a magnificent vindication of the Daily Mail's journalism. Yenel emphasized that the judge accepted the honesty of its journalists' evidence in every single case regarding how stories were sourced, pointing to publicists, palace aides, friends, and other legitimate contacts as the true origin of the information in question. And now, having won, the publisher has indicated it intends to pursue recovery of its legal costs from the litigation costs that, remember, could run as high as £50 million combined for both sides. One media law expert summed up the financial reality bluntly. Even though Associated Newspapers won, with legal costs estimated between £40 and £50 million, there's arguably no real financial winner here. It's simply been an enormously expensive case for everyone involved. So what does this actually mean? Stepping back from the individual case, this ruling is being described as one of the biggest legal setbacks in Harry's long campaign against sections of the British press, especially set against his previous wins over Mirror Group and his settlement with News Group newspapers. It shows these cases aren't a guaranteed formula. Each publisher, each set of allegations, each piece of evidence gets tested independently in court, and the outcome genuinely isn't predetermined. It also highlights something important about how these press intrusion cases actually work legally. Winning requires more than a strong personal conviction that wrongdoing occurred, even when that conviction is shared by multiple prominent public figures. Courts need documented, provable unlawful conduct tied to specific articles. That's a high bar, and this case shows what happens when claimants can't clear it. There's also timing worth noting. This ruling landed right as Harry started a week of UK engagements marking 1 year until the 2027 Invictus Games in Birmingham, and just before he arrived for a public event at the think tank Chatham House. His wife, Meghan, and their children didn't travel with him for this UK visit, which reporting has tied to ongoing security concerns, a separate, long-running issue in Harry's relationship with the UK. For the broader debate about tabloid power, privacy, and press freedom in Britain, this case cuts both ways depending on who you ask. Supporters of Harry's campaign will see this as evidence that publishers can outlawyer and outlast even well-funded claimants, and that proving historical wrongdoing gets harder with time. Defenders of the press will point to this as proof that not every accusation against tabloid journalism holds up under actual judicial scrutiny, and that assuming guilt simply because a story feels invasive isn't how the legal system is supposed to work. Both of those views have been expressed loudly since the ruling came down, and that tension isn't going away. So where does this leave things? Prince Harry has said clearly that this ruling won't end his broader effort against what he sees as unlawful newspaper practices. Associated Newspapers, meanwhile, is claiming full vindication and moving to recover its costs. What's clear is that this case adds a significant new chapter to one of the longest-running conflicts between the British royal family and the tabloid press. A conflict that's produced a genuine legal win for Harry against one publisher, a settlement with apology against another, and now, a decisive courtroom defeat against a third. If you want to understand modern royal media relations, this trial is going to be studied for a long time, not just for what it says about Harry, but for what it says about how difficult it actually is to prove historical, unlawful journalism in a court of law. That's the story. If you found this breakdown useful, let me know what you think in the comments. Should Harry keep pursuing these cases, or is it time to move on? And subscribe for more deep dives into stories like this one. Thanks for watching.